losing muscle. Is it easier to lose muscle when you're older? I mean, does that tend to happen?
It's not easier to lose muscle, but it is more difficult to build muscle.
Okay.
So they've done studies where they would have, subjects that were young in their 20s and 30s and older subjects in their 60s. And they would give them a protein drink that they knew would cause the body to store some protein, to build some muscle with it. And they identified what they called anabolic resistance in the older group. And that was overcome by actually increasing the amount of protein that they gave them. So if they gave the young group 20 grams of protein, let's say a whey protein drink, they had the expected response. But it took up to 40 grams in the older subjects to get that same response. Now, part of that can also be the fact that the older group were not physically fit as people are in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah, right.
We can change our body's propensity to use protein for building muscle and that by creating a need, right? And if you haven't created a need for your body to store protein and build muscle for the last 20 years, of course it's going to be a little bit resistant to that. But it is a real thing. And if you're taking care of your parents, just giving them a little drink in a can and hoping that that's going to keep them from withering away, it's not, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And actually, the older that we get, the more important quality protein is for our health.
Okay, and so to continue on with the whole 50 theme, this next question actually comes from my cousin, Kimberly Medina Torres. She said, yes, please address the 50-year tummy roll that seemed to show up overnight.
That's a big one.
It may be related to
menopause.
perimenopause. Help.
And a lot of women seem to have that issue. I mean, that's a big one in our questions. And personally, even, I don't know, why is that we tend to kind of have a middle that we didn't even before.
Even Laura Scattergaria wanted to know, why do women gain weight after menopause? So it's kind of the same thing. Most of them are gaining it around their abdomen.
Right.
That's a three-part question, three kind of different answers. Let's start with the overnight little tummy roll, muffin top, I guess.
Muffin top.
Yes,
that you didn't see way back in the 50s and 60s. This is kind of a new thing in the last 20, 30 years.
Your body has two kinds of fat. There's go-to fat, and then there's emergency fat, okay? And they're stored in different places. So your go-to fat is stored inside of your abdomen, okay, around your organs, and it's just all stuffed in there on the inside of where your muscles are.
Your visceral.
Underneath.
That's right. Okay. It's called visceral fat.
Yes.
Omental fat is another name for it.
Okay.
And that is fat that your body can access very easily. And even those fat cells are a little bit resistant to insulin, which means that even after you've eaten a meal, they still might be releasing some fat at the same time, right? So that fat is kind of always available to you to burn. Your emergency fat is stored under your skin, and it's really only released when your body's metabolism is indicating there's a real need for these additional calories.
Okay.
In terms of exercise, if we're thinking about exercise, that means that the long and slow walk on the treadmill or, around the block, around the beach is not going to access emergency fat. Okay. But it will access that, what gives you a belly type fat.
Okay.
Only when you increase the intensity enough to cause the release of a hormone called adrenaline will that access subcutaneous fat, or the fat under your skin. So, low-intensity exercise will not mobilize subcutaneous or the fat under your skin very well.
Okay.
Over time, if you're not eating, of course, it gets accessed. High-intensity exercise that really gets your heart going, let's say, a spin class or something like that, that's really difficult, does cause you to release adrenaline, and that's what makes your heart beat so fast and you breathe so hard. That's when the body is trying to release subcutaneous fat.
Okay.
So if your activity lifestyle does not ever involve intense effort, it's going to be more difficult to get rid of the rolls, the muffins,
Interesting,
and the arm fat, all of that kind of thing that becomes more difficult when you hit menopause. Now, and that's true regardless of any age, okay? So there was a lot of early diets and products sold that says, in just a week I can cinch up my belt, right? And essentially they weren't eating. They didn't have to exercise, but they didn't
losing
eat.
Water.
Well, they were losing fat, but it was the omental or the visceral fat that is just accessed when you don't eat. So if you stop eating, that's what your body is going to go to first, and your waist will get smaller, but it won't get firmer.
Right.
It's still squishy. It's just smaller, right?
Kind of like a smaller version of yourself.
Well, and lately, I've been hearing a lot that just walking is good enough. I mean, that's all you really need. You just need to move your body. But that's not really true.
For aging, and also for if you're already in good condition and in good shape, walking's like the best exercise you could do for yourself.
Okay.
Low impact, it gets your heart rate up some, gets your blood flowing, all of these things. But if you're trying to lose weight and you've already got that, like you said, subcutaneous, where it's like the spongy kind of fat on the outer layer, you've got to do something harder. And I always liked interval sprints. You can do them on a bike. You can do it if you don't like impact. You can go to the stadium and run up the stairs and then come down and walk, run up the stairs, come down and walk. Just make sure your heart rate gets...
It's good to clarify that, because I think that might be something that we're latching onto, that I hear in the media or whatever, that really all you need to do is walk. Walking's better than doing nothing. Yeah. I mean, and it is going to be good for you, but if we want to really lose some weight, we've got to get some intensity in there.
Well, when I take you down the hill and you don't like coming up the hill.
Well, I don't like going down the hill.
Because your heart rate's breathing. Yeah. Well, there's other things that happen on the down part, but that's a completely different topic. We could do another time.
Well, and the elevation here is definitely different.
But when I'm bringing you up and your heart rate's pounding, you're like, oh, this is hard. I'm like, keep going. Push it, because it's only like 5 minutes. But
I can handle it. It's just that I breathe hard because the elevation's so different here.
It is. And you do it just fine. But that's just a good example of like how easy it is to get intervals. It's not like you have to run or anything. You can just do a hill. Keep going up and down the hill.
Yeah, something that gets your heart pounding and your breath going. Okay.
And just before we move on, to reiterate the importance of walking, the anti-aging, there's something now, interestingly enough, in my field, as they were studying exercise, they couldn't understand kind of the results they were getting in terms of chronic disease. And they would have two groups. They would say, here's our exercise group, and here's our group that doesn't exercise as the control. Right?
Okay.
So they'd have the group exercise, and then they would look at their genes and say, well, is this preventing the genes associated with these chronic illnesses? And they didn't see as much change as they were expecting until somebody started to say, well, let's look closer at the genes in the control group who weren't exercising. And what they discovered was it was the not exercising that is the unnatural condition for human beings. So not exercising is what causes the change in genes, what they call epigenetics, right? That leads to chronic disease.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's the unnatural condition. It's like taking an animal, a wild animal,
caging
you put them in a cage.
Okay.
Put it, or call it a cubicle,
Yeah.
And it's not good for us.
Call it a cubicle.
And so that walking, and they have, and it's called, sedentary physiology, and they have discovered that actually walking every day for a given amount has a tremendous impact on preventing some of those negative changes. No, it won't make you lose weight.
Right.
But it will stave off chronic disease.
Okay. And our bodies were meant to move.
Yes.
I mean, just remembering that, I think.
And including our brains. Yeah. And that's a whole other discussion about the impact of exercise on our brains.
Wow. God. Yeah, I want to hear that too.
Moods, but
yeah.
Okay. And one other thing about menopause, estrogen, right? You all heard about estrogen, and we can think that estrogen causes a lot of things we don't like, but it also causes a lot of things that we do. And not only is bone mass, dependent upon estrogen and mood, but also our metabolism. And we have fat cells that are sensitive to estrogen and fat cells that are also sensitive to androgens, right? And when our estrogen levels drop, we become more kind of androgen dominant.
It's testosterone.
Okay.
And like testosterone. And the fat that used to not want to grow now all of a sudden is growing. You see men gain weight on their midsection, when women hit menopause, they began to gain weight in their midsection because of the absence of estrogen.
Okay.
So
how do we remedy that? I mean, without taking like estrogen drugs, or there's something we can do to
Well, that's where we go back to the math of the problem. If you're not eating in excess of food, you're not gaining weight anywhere. It doesn't matter whether you have a lot of estrogen or no estrogen.
Okay.
So if we prevent ourselves from getting sedentary and we watch our eating habits, you won't be gaining weight anyway.
Okay. Well, what about our mood and that kind of menopausal estrogen drop? Are there things that we can do to help that? Night sweats, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's kind of veering into a little different subject, but I know that these ladies, and I am curious about that too.
Yeah, the hot flashes, night sweats, those kinds of things have not been buttoned down yet. So it's kind of like, no, we don't have a cure for the common cold, but people don't die from the common cold. So we're not going to spend our tax dollars on people, running down a cure for the common cold. Hiccups. We don't know what causes hiccups. Okay. Why do people yawn when they see someone else yawn?
Yeah.
We're not spending a lot of money to try to uncover those mysteries.
Well, the problem is we don't sleep. We have hot flashes. We don't sleep. Then everybody's affected.
And that could
They should study that.
And that actually could contribute to the weight loss issue as well, if you're not getting enough sleep. So.
And I think that's even one of our questions, to be honest.
So briefly, before moving on, it's not a simple answer that if I'm having hot flashes and night sweats, that if I just take some estrogen, it will all go away. It doesn't.
Okay.
And so there are women who have varying levels of estrogen, and they're all having the same symptoms. It doesn't seem to be related to the level of estrogen that's going around.
Okay.
Again, there's nothing you can do aside from supplementing hormones or whatnot, except doing what you can to stay healthy. And that will be your best bet for maintaining your circadian rhythms. I sleep when I'm supposed to. I'm awake when I'm supposed to. I'm not falling asleep in the middle of the day. My moods are normal. It's not like I'm bouncing off the walls, but I'm not depressed either. I'm expected, my default is there and I'm okay. But really it is just a healthy lifestyle in a holistic perspective, which is food and relationships and exercise. And
I wonder if that, as a psychologist too, or having a degree there, as we get older, our lives change. Our kids are going away. We may be caring for an elderly parent. We might see, problems in our marriage because we were so busy taking care of our kids or whatever it is. So maybe some of those changes in our emotions.
And that can't be understated.
Can be affecting that.
I think, my wife and I discuss empty nest, right?
Yeah.
So we are having children who are becoming adults and moving away. And I'm like, well, this can't happen soon enough.
I know. Sometimes.
It's like, my gosh, how long does this parenting stuff go on? And she's like, oh, but, I hate to see them go. And it's a very different reaction to not having the kids around. And so it shouldn't be understated how important the role and relationship that women have with their children that is very different from that of men.
Yeah.
And if you know that it's happening, it helps to, one, identify that that's what's happening and not attribute your emotions to some other, the sky is falling or everything's bad. It's not everything's bad. These real things are changing in your life, and it's okay, and you know that there would be an impact on your mood. And you do need to find ways to replace those energies and attention that you spent. When are you going to be home, and where you're at, who are you with something that is fulfilling to you and satisfying, constructive. Find hobbies, do things that you always wanted to do that you couldn't before. And build a life after children.
Right.
Before moving on, when you were asking Lori about, is there other things besides taking supplemental like estrogen or something? What about, I know we're spending a lot of time on this menopause thing, but it's a big one for most of our listeners. So what about black cohosh, yam, root paste, those kind of things?
Evening primrose, I've heard.
Primrose,
some of those.
Soy.
Flax.
Soy.
Genistein.
Soy, bad.
Yeah.
Soy lecithin, okay.
Well, let's not say soy is bad.
I'm just saying it.
Unfermented.
Everything has a place and a purpose. It should be understood that the way that what we will call plant estrogens, right, phytoestrogens, the way they're presented to the public is incorrect. They are not estrogens. It is true